Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. I am GM Dave, your man behind the screen, and welcome back to another rambling, roaming vlog. Today we're going to be tackling a sensitive issue, the topic of racism in our tabletop games. Now, before I go on, a quick announcement about the computer situation. For those of you who are not aware, this last Saturday, my computer had a complete systems failure due to a corruption that formed in Windows 10 thanks to their ever so wonderfully functional Windows updater. I took it to my repair guy on Sunday. He took a look at it, and unfortunately, it was a loss. So I am currently without a computer until Thursday at the earliest. He was fortunately able to find me a new one, an upgrade no less, from the previous one I had for about the same cost. Problem is I don't have the money right now, so I'm going to have to wait until Thursday at the earliest when payday comes to see if I can actually afford to go and purchase it from him, as well as pay him for the labor that he did trying to fix the old computer. So, fingers crossed that come Thursday, I will have my computer back with my data saved. Fortunately, it is retrievable, and can get back to editing the video that I was in the middle of finishing up when the computer failed. So, with that said, let's move on to the topic at hand. Racism in our tabletop games. Now, this is a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, and rightfully so. Racism, whether it's handled in a benevolent or malevolent manner, is not a comfortable thing. And generally speaking, when we hear the term racism, we associate it with the malevolent. And with good reason. It's a lot easier to notice malevolent racism than it is benevolent racism. But don't be mistaken, benevolent racism absolutely exists. After all, recall that racism involves treating anybody differently in any way on the basis of their race. Whether you're treating them better or worse, if you're treating someone differently on the basis of their race, that's racism. But we're specifically talking about malevolent racism here because that's the one that most people know, and that's the aspect that most people explore when it comes to trying to explore this topic in tabletop games. However, how does one safely go about exploring this particular topic? Well, that can be a tricky thing sometimes. And the very first thing that you want to do is you, as players and GM, want to sit down during your session 0 and you want to discuss this topic. If one or all of you are thinking about exploring this topic in any way, shape, or form in your games, you need to discuss it. It's a sensitive enough issue, difficult enough to handle, that I would say this is a 100% rule. If you want to tackle racism in any way, shape, or form in your games, you got to talk about it first and make sure everyone's okay with it, make sure you're all on the same page. Secondly, the big issue that I often see people discuss when it comes to tackling racism in games is, how do you differentiate clearly between this is about the character, not about the player? Now, the short answer is it's going to be in the context of the situation and the language that you're using. The long answer is you got to be real careful about what you say, how you say it, when you say it, where you say it, why you say it, and so on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. So how can you make sure that's clear? How can you make sure it's absolutely clear that you're not talking about a player when you're having a moment of racism in a game? For example, let's say you're playing an elf wizard and you've got a human paladin in your party, and recently she just saved your life in a really dangerous battle. She got in there, she ate a hit for you that would have killed you, and slew the creature that was about to rip your head off and saved your life. And you want to show her some thanks. You want to give her the elven dagger that you were given by an old friend of yours, because it means a lot to you, and what she did means a lot to you. But you want to make it even more personal. So you're in such and such city, and you decide, I'm going to go to the jeweler, and I'm going to see if they can inscribe in Elvish a message of thanks to my paladin on the blade of this dagger before I give it to her. So you go, and when you enter the store, the man looks up at your character. He looks up at you and frowns immediately. And when you take a step through the threshold, he raises his hand and he says, "Stop right there, pointy ear. I don't serve your kind here. You're not welcome." What was in that sentence? What was in that exchange that shows that this jeweler, that in this instance, the jeweler character is referencing the player's wizard character? It's not just the fact that this was in the form of narration and dialogue, although those are the two most obvious answers. It is, first and foremost, the immediate reaction that the NPC gave upon seeing this elf enter his store. He looks up and he frowns. There's an immediate negative reaction to the sight of the elf, because this guy really hates and distrusts elves. Why? We don't know yet. We haven't really explored that. But whatever his reasons, he hates and mistrusts elves. So immediately, he shows that with a physical response in narration. Then, moving into dialogue, he references the character's appearance directly. "Stop right there, pointy ears." This makes it very clear that this is not the GM speaking to the player in a racially insensitive manner. This is the NPC speaking to the player character in a racially insensitive manner. And this leaves the player character open to react however they wish. They can get indignant. They can try to argue back. They can tell the man, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not looking for any trouble. I was just hoping you could, I heard you do good work and I wanted to give you my business."
99004.
You have options there that you can then explore. So that's one thing. Make it clear. Make it certain that this is an in-character moment and leave no confusion. What's something else you can do? Well, you approach the racism with a subtle hand. You don't go overt with it. Even in the real world, even in days where racism was the most rampant, in face-to-face interactions, generally speaking, you would not find that many instances of racist people being overtly racist to the face of someone who is of a race they dislike or distrust, as opposed to racist people speaking ill about those people of that race behind their backs, behind closed doors, and with friends or people who agree with their view. It's a subtler, quieter thing. Even in the days when it was more overt and more open, it tended to be quieter unless people got riled up. You should be handling this the same way in your games. This should not be something that's really blatant and in your face all the time. A dirty look here and there, a comment here and there, that's fine. But if every person in this city, let's say this city let's say like one of the big things in this city is there is a culture among the humans of this city that they greatly distrust elves. They're very racist to elves. Kind of like the Nords in Skyrim. That's a fine example. Even among the Nords in Skyrim, you could be walking around Winterhold, the Nord capital, the ancient Nord capital, and you will hear the occasional comment from people, from Nords in the game. If you're playing an elf, you will hear them occasionally make a messed up comment about your character. Or look at the world of The Witcher as well. The world of The Witcher heavily explores themes of racism. And a lot of people greatly distrust the character of Geralt of Rivia because he is a Witcher, and it is very obvious by his physical appearance that he is a Witcher. Racism and distrust are alive and well in that game, but very infrequently is that racism overt. Most of the time, it's handled with an offhand comment, or a couple of people discussing in a corner and viewing at you literally, talking amongst each other, getting one another riled up to come and then confront you about being a Witcher. The subtle hand leading, building up to the overt instances is the most effective and most interesting way to explore this concept in our games, because it leaves the players room to react with their characters. If you're just blatantly overt and in their face about it all the time, though, not only will that make them feel uncomfortable because it is very hostile, but it's also just kind of cringeworthy. And it's cringeworthy because it's not really representative of the way people actually behave. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And really, it just sort of pushes the boundaries too far in that sense. The subtle hand, the gentle hand, is not only more interesting and more engaging and open to exploration, it's also more interesting because it tends to be more insidious. If you're just blatant and in their face about it all the time, well, you're losing a lot of the underhandedness, a lot of the undertones and the intonations that come with the more subtle, gentle hand of racism. And that loss not only eats up a lot of what makes exploring this topic interesting to begin with, it also just tends to lead to a lot more discomfort because it is simply far too overt. So in summation, what can you do to make racism and the exploration of racism something viable for your games? First and foremost, discuss it in your session 0 and make sure everyone at the table is okay with exploring this, and make sure your comfort zones are clearly stated. 2, make it clear that these instances are coming from in-character moments only. One character to another character, never player to player, GM to player, player to GM. In character only. Make that clear through your word choices in dialogue and narration. And 3, approach it with a careful, subtle hand. Do not be too overt. Do not be in your players' faces. Do not be in your GM's face about this stuff. Subtlety is key to making this interesting, engaging, and something that we can handle in a more comfortable manner because it allows us to take it in smaller doses. Well, that's all I have for you guys today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. If you liked it, please leave me a thumbs up. If you want to see more of my content, feel free to subscribe and follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. If you have something else to bring to this topic, this is, after all, a very, very big topic to discuss, a very big thing to handle in tabletop games. If you have your own experiences, good or bad, with trying to tackle this topic, please feel free to share them in the comments below. I would love to hear your own take on this particular issue and tackling this particular issue in our games. Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's acceptable? Is it never acceptable? Why do you think this way? Whatever your take, whatever you feel, please keep the discussion civil. We do not want to be devolving into shouting matches and accusations of people being racist just because they are interested in exploring an aspect of our behavior that is a little less acceptable. With that said, folks, as always, I am GM Dave, your man behind the screen, and it is my sincerest hope that you roll high, role play well, and as always, game on.